Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamsin Entertainment. And welcome to the conversation. Just before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. But most importantly, please share this video. Get the word out there so we can talk about all things that we love. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're looking at my all-time favorite Star Wars movie and favorite movie of all time, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. In addition to the cast from the first movie, which is technically the fourth movie, but it's the first movie to ever come out, you have Billy D. Williams, Frank Oz, Jerry Bullock, Jason Wingreen, Clive Revel, Kenneth Coley, Julian Glover, Michael Sheard, Michael Culver, and Bob Anderson. So in the opening crawl of this one, it explains the rebels have fled their base on the far moon of Yavin because the Imperials, after the destruction of the Empire, has flushed them out. So they went into hiding, and Vader is seeking them and Luke Skywalker because he noticed something different about him in the Death Star attack. He noticed that the Force was strong with him, and so Vader's mission in this is to capture Luke Skywalker and to bring him to the Emperor to convert him to the dark side. To do this, he sends out thousands of probes across the galaxy, and one finds the rebel base on the ice world of Hoth. Now, if you watched A New Hope, you think Vader was ruthless there, and if you've watch the movies leading up to The Empire Strikes Back, you see how ruthless Vader can be. But this one, when it first came out, really demonstrated how ruthless Vader can be, because he is just offing his subordinates left and right because they keep on failing him. He does this by choking them to death with the Force. Just like he almost choked the one admiral to death in that meeting on the Death Star. And his first victim in this movie is Admiral Ozzel, who keeps on jumping the gun or just flat out disagreeing with Darth Vader, and Vader's having none of it. It shows you just how powerful he is, that he can choke someone across the galaxy. They don't have to be in the same room. So the probe that finds the rebel base catches Luke's eye. Although Luke doesn't know that it's a probe, he just sees that it's a meteorite that crashed, so he's going to inspect it. And in going to inspect it, he gets ambushed by a creature on the planet and is taken to its cave to be eaten later because it also eats the mount he's on, which is called a tauntaun. He eventually escapes, but since he can only rely on his own 2 feet to get him back to base, he starts crawling back because it's so cold and he has nothing to really warm him up other than his movement, which is slowed because he's freezing to death. And a little behind the scenes, what's so amazing about this scene, and just making movies back then in general. So George Lucas only directed A New Hope from the original trilogy. He nearly, quite literally, almost died making that movie because a ton of stress was put on him. He wanted to make his vision so badly, and he had pressure not only from that, but from the studio and them interfering with the project because the studio put out a lot of money for this new director. Yes, he directed 3 films before this, but they weren't that great of success, and this was a big risk back then. And the doctors heavily suggested, if you're going to direct any more films after this, you need to get other directors. You just be the writer and producer. So Irving Kushner is the director of The Empire Strikes Back, and he does a masterful job. And what's interesting about this scene, if I remember correctly from the commentary, if you watch the movie with it, this was shot in Alberta, Canada, or it was shot in Canada during the dead of winter, and the film crew was nice and cozy inside the hotel, and Mark Hamill was freezing to death outside while they made this scene. You would never know that if you weren't told it. It seems like the entire crew was out there capturing this scene, but no, they were sitting there nice and comfortable drinking their coffee or their tea or their hot chocolates inside the warm hotel, and Mark Hamill was freezing his butt off in the snow. Another interesting aspect about this, between the movies, Mark Hamill got into a car accident and he suffered scarring on his face. And to write that into the story, Luke gets slashed by the monster, and that explains why Luke has scars now. At some point, the Imperials land and the rebels fight them to escape, and the main characters do, of course, or else this movie would be very short. But another part is you hear the Imperial March for the first time in this movie. It's not in A New Hope at all. But John Williams is a master. He's my favorite composer of all time. And in the opening, after the crawl, he plays a tiny bit of the Imperial March played by the flute. It sounds like it's been previously heard, but it hasn't. Just John Williams is a genius. Plain and simple. Before the rebels leave, and while Luke is trying to survive and crawling back to base, he has a vision from Obi-Wan. He's told to go to the Dagobah system and meet Yoda to be trained by him. Once everyone leaves Hoth, Luke goes to Dagobah, and Han and Leia have to flee the Empire. But the Millennium Falcon is in disrepair. The hyperdrive's not working. They get tangled up with the Empire on their way to some safe port, and once they evade them, they find the city of Bespin, where Lando Calrissian resides, this time played by Billy D. Williams. And while Han and Leia, Chewbacca, and 3PO are evading the Empire, Darth Vader hires bounty hunters to track them down. And if you didn't see the Star Wars Holiday Special, and I only suggest that if you're absolutely curious, because I tried watching it and I couldn't get through it. That's how bad it is. It's so bad, Lucas is ashamed of it. He made sure that it didn't make it past the TV special. He didn't want any VHS getting out there. The only way you can view it now, to my knowledge, is on YouTube. And the only good thing to come out of that special was animated bits that introduces Boba Fett. And yes, I'm going to talk about it again. My reason for not liking the special editions. So when you're first introduced to Boba Fett, he is voiced by Don Franks. When you see him again in The Empire Strikes Back, he is voiced by Jason Wingreen, but played by Jeremy Bulloch, who I met. Really cool dude. But Lucas, in his tinkering, and here's a spoiler for the prequel trilogy, Boba Fett is the son of Jango Fett. He's a clone of Jango Fett, but Jango wanted an unaltered clone where he would just grow naturally instead of having an accelerated growth rate. And Lucas must have figured, I gotta have continuity. Temuera Morrison is Jango Fett and all of the clones. Boba Fett should also sound like Temuera Morrison. The problem with that is, at least the first time he had the redubbing of the lines for Empire Strikes Back, it sounds like they went with the first take from Temuera, and that was it. And those first takes, to me, sound horrible. I don't know why they wouldn't continue to do takes until they got to sounding something remotely close to what Jason Wingreen sounded like. Now, the Book of Boba Fett is out, and Boba Fett was in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. I have no problem with Temuera Morrison playing Boba Fett. In fact, I really like that he is, because now he's getting the character down right. He's given an opportunity to get the lines correct. And in the first iteration that they changed the dubbing, I don't know why I didn't do more takes. And there's other reasons in here too. Like, for instance, there's a scene in here where Vader gets contacted by the Emperor. Now, in the original, the Emperor is played by a woman, Marjorie Eaton, and voiced by Clive Revill. Lucas has fiddled with this scene more than once. I'm trying to remember correctly that in the first iteration of the special edition, he simply brought in Ian McDermott to redo this scene, which is fine. The line stayed the same. There was nothing wrong with that. But since that first one, he's gone back and changed lines here and there. And it's just, you'd have to watch each scene. There's probably a comparison video out there of all of them on YouTube. I would suggest you look them up. When you see all these changes done, the context of everything gets changed. I always hold the belief that Darth Vader is far more powerful than the Emperor. And the original version of this scene proves that. Now, you could say that the Emperor is simply trusting Vader's intuition. Sure. But also, you could see it as Vader is so powerful, he's able to use the mind trick on the Emperor. Now, that might be a bit of a stretch, but just watch the variations of this scene on YouTube. You'll see what I'm talking about. There is such thing as tampering too much or something. And again, I'll link below because I go into further detail of why I don't like the redubbing of Boba Fett in this one. This first episode of my podcast is getting used a lot. If you do go to watch it, please like and share it and get the word out there about all these wonderful conversations that we're having. Thank you. So, you learn after Han, Leia, Chewbacca, and 3PO land on Bespin, and they meet Lando. Everything seems to be good, and then you see the first plot twist in here. And this is not the big one. I'm not going to give that one away. But Lando betrays them. So the city he's in charge of is also a mining operation. And he explains to them that his mining operation is so small, he's not noticed by the Empire or the Mining Guild. And his clientele would prefer to be anonymous. But the Empire is a step ahead with the help of Boba Fett. And so they contact Lando before Han and the crew get there. But again, Han shoots first. This leads to Vader's trap for Luke. He uses his friends as bait. And while training on Dagobah, Yoda is telling him what the Force can do. And part of what the Force can do is see into the past, the present, and the future. And Luke sees a glimpse of the near future. And that shakes him from his training and prompts him to go rescue his friends, despite Yoda and Obi-Wan trying to stop him, saying that if you do this, you're going to go down the dark path. You don't want to do that. Look what happened to Vader. But Luke promises he'll be back to complete his training. Of course, Luke not being completely developed yet, he falls for the trap. And this leads to my second favorite lightsaber battle. This is my second favorite one because it is the beginning of really well choreographed and dynamic lightsaber fights. It's not big and flashy like the one from Phantom Menace, but it doesn't have to be. It shows the difference between the experienced Darth Vader and the beginner Luke Skywalker, but also the power dynamic between them, because Luke is still angry that Vader murdered his father. And Vader uses the relationship that Luke had with Obi-Wan against him, saying that he can complete his training and he would be more powerful with him. And at one point he says they could both overthrow the Emperor and rule the galaxy. By acknowledging that Obi-Wan has taught him well, but that he still has much to learn. And that is playing with Luke's head. Now, another great part of this lightsaber battle is that it progresses from Vader simply toying with him because he doesn't want to kill Luke. He wants to bring Luke to the Emperor to convert him. But Luke proves to be such a hassle that it leads to Vader using other methods to subdue him, to at one point where he becomes a movie monster. And Vader, in part, is a movie monster. And you have to watch this movie and see this lightsaber battle. It's just absolutely fantastic. It still has me on the edge of my seat. There is so much tension there. You can't take your eyes away from it. With this lightsaber battle, they don't use David Prowse for this scene. They bring in Bob Anderson for the stunts in here. And I remember watching the commentary, or was it behind this? I think it was behind the scenes. Bob had to remind himself to not go too hard because he's wearing something akin to armor. He can take a hit or two. Mark is wearing nothing but clothes. He can't be hit by the metal rod that are the lightsabers at this point in time. He doesn't want to injure him, so he has to be careful. This has to be extremely coordinated, practiced, and then carried out in front of the camera. And it is. This lightsaber battle is top tier. This is why it's my second favorite. My first favorite demonstrates what lightsaber battles were and can be, and this one does take it to the next level in this generation of the series. I absolutely love this movie. I can't recommend it enough. I guess you could watch it by itself, but you're going to be missing a whole lot of context if you don't at least watch A New Hope first. Those are my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.